Kiwi. Time to catch up with some opinions from Mr. Public Address, the Hard News blog over there, and also Media 7 on the TVNZ7 channel. Russell Brown, of course. Morning, Russell. Morning. Party Central, the debacle, Murray McCully's blitzkrieg, the annexation, whatever you want to call it. Len Brown is certainly not happy about what's gone down, that's for sure.
Well, he's got every right to be. I'm actually just finishing a blog post, and its title will be "The Minister's Brain Has Exploded."
Yeah, because we were both listening to him on Radio New Zealand's Checkpoint yesterday afternoon. It sounded like he was making it up as he went along.
Absolutely. This is just bizarre, because it's now clear that both central and local government officials had been discussing what needed to be done. They've been doing it since Friday. The council had mostly been doing it. The council was preparing a report, which is due to be delivered this morning, on what else needed to be done to prevent a repeat of the crush. The one thing that they had been discussing was the need for to be able to obtain consent at short notice, so you could close down CBD streets, principally key streets.
But surely the council could have still handled that, right?
It would have been. It does appear that it would have been easier to do it under the Rugby World Cup Empowering Act, which gives the Rugby World Cup minister the power to declare a permitted activity. So
have they effectively taken over or not, or is this all just symbolism and talk and bluster?
Well, yeah, if you actually look at Section 48 of the Empowering Act, it doesn't actually give the government any power to take over any part of Auckland.
Huh.
All it does is lets them expedite consents as quickly as possible. But what Murray McCully did when he called a press conference yesterday afternoon out of the blue without telling Len Brown was to declare pretty much takeover of Auckland, including putting new fan zones on two other wharves, Captain Cook Wharf and Bledisloe. These are working commercial wharves. There's nothing there at the moment. They're not safe places for people to be, and you would surely only use them in an absolute emergency. You'd
need a few more kayakers in the water to pick up bodies.
Yeah, exactly. And apart from anything else, Captain Cook Wharf is not really a suitable venue, because on the night of the All Blacks versus France game, there will be a very large ship from Japan unloading cars.
Yeah.
They don't appear to have thought of that.
No. Interesting talking to Russell Norman earlier, and he pointed out that Murray McCully did have a lot of control over what is going on. In fact, he even decided the colour of the uniform of the volunteers or staff workers down there.
Yeah, a great deal more than that. I've heard from multiple people at various levels that he was absolutely micromanaging the whole thing. And I think that's what has really, one of the things that's really annoyed people is that this declaration that we're going to take over implies that he had nothing to do with it in the first place.
Yeah. Not the case.
Yeah. But what was being discussed was using the minister's powers, but they weren't talking about the government taking over the whole thing. And that's not, it still is not what's going to happen. The council will be doing the management. Murray McCully can't, magic up a whole lot of people to do his bidding. The council is still going to be running it.
Yeah.
It's an embarrassing, bizarre piece of behaviour, but unfortunately it's not exactly out of character for Murray McCully either. Those of us who are familiar with his history will know about things like the Tourism Board, where he was just an utter empire builder, did things without permission, poor lines of accountability, and you're seeing exactly that style here. It's appalling.
And yet, though, because is he Trade Minister? He's Foreign Affairs Minister, but he seems to have his he seems to have a handle of that portfolio, though, doesn't he? I mean, he seems to be across that.
No, you talk to anyone involved in delivering New Zealand aid, they hate him. No, he tends to act unilaterally, doesn't take people with him, makes poor decisions, and honestly, the whole aid sector has been up in arms about McCully for a couple of years now. So it's not, although he does say the Pacific Forum seems to have gone relatively well for him.
Yeah.
So you have to say that for him. But one really interesting thing I've been told is that a lot of people have said, well, Queen's Wharf should have been ticketed in advance, because it had been touted as the party place for the whole of Auckland.
Yes.
And of course, the whole of Auckland turns up,
Yeah.
and there's room for 10% of them.
Yeah.
And the rest of them just basically, end up massing outside the gates of Queen's Wharf, right on top of our public transport hub, shutting it down.
Yeah.
There was actually a suggestion to ticket it in advance, and Murray McCully was among those who rejected it.
Yeah.
It's just, the idea of disavowing responsibility for this is just ridiculous.
I mean, but also, regardless of the size of the crowd, you've got to have some kind of dismay about the population of New Zealand, though, right? We don't seem to be able to conduct ourselves. We get a little bit of booze into us, and we're just not good. We don't behave quite like people do elsewhere around the world.
Yeah, on the other hand, we weren't like the Canadians, and we didn't have a Stanley Cup riot either.
But there was nothing to riot about.
No, true. But even the police on Friday night were at pains to make the point that what was going on in the CBD was chaotic, but it was mostly high spirit.
Right.
And I heard from people who'd been down there, and a lot of people seemed to actually have a great time.
What do you make of the Waka group and what they experienced?
That's a dreadful incident, poor crowd management. They were sent back into the crowd, but it also seems from the Herald story that some of the young men in that group also panicked, and they had their paddles, and that seems to have provoked a response as well, because you had people talking to the Herald saying these guys were out of control and aggressive. Obviously, they were from out of town. They were protecting their young women, which was fair enough, but one person told the Herald that he had to protect 3 elderly Indian women who were in danger of getting knocked over by these guys. So, it's a mess, but I suspect there that blame should be shared around.
Yeah.
And it's terrible that sort of thing happened to people, but, a lot of people, even the ones in town, actually had a really good time that night.
Yeah, well, let's not forget, I guess, by and large, as a success, but this, to use the rugby terminology, a rolling maul has sort of developed throughout the week.
Yeah, and I think, probably the big long-term lesson from that is that Aucklanders will flock to their new waterfront, because all this is pretty new, and we actually need to make that work.
We've been starved of it, haven't we?
Yeah, and I think in the long term, that means the CBD rail link, and Stephen Joyce just needs to get on board, because a lot of the problems with the trains would not have happened had we had a rail loop in the inner city. You would have been able to just simply send the trains the other way.
Right.
As it is, we have a dead-end station where no one can come in unless another train comes out.
Yeah.
And it's just inadequate. And if people are going to come down to the Auckland waterfront, which they should, because it's amazing. It's a beautiful, beautiful waterfront, and and there are plans to open it up. Then we actually need a transport system that can do that.
What do you make of the company with the weird name Veolia?
Veolia.
Veolia.
I mean, this is another thing that people have been. I saw someone blaming Len Brown for hiring Veolia. He didn't. Veolia have been initially as Connects have been running the Auckland train since 2004. And the last council gave them an extension through till 2014. They've had their whoopsies, and I think there's a mixture of it was just a mess, and there's not much they could have done, and they could have done a lot better, particularly with informing people what was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, and I think the council needs to take the rap for overselling public transport as well. There simply wasn't the capacity.
No, doesn't exist.
No, exactly.
Russell Brown, thanks very much for joining us today.
Righto.
Cheers. See ya. Russell Brown, of course, over at publicaddress.net and the Media 7 show, TVN.